US Route 85. Yeah. Alright, hello everyone, I am Cornwallis437, and today we are going to be talking about the control cities along US Route 85 going southbound. Now, as we learned in the US 85 northbound video, US 85 goes from roughly the very tiny town of Fortuna, North Dakota, all the way down to El Paso, Texas, where it also meets the western terminus of US Route 62 as it ends there. And we also learned that in the northern half of the route, it is very desolate. Doesn't really go through very many even decently sized towns. Although in the southern portion of the route, that is where most of its population lies, as it passes through major cities such as Denver, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and of course El Paso, where it ends. So let's take a look one more time at the map of the route of US 85. As we can see, it goes through the Dakotas before it goes into Wyoming, and then it joins up with Interstate 25 for most of the rest of its route. It splits off from Interstate 25 a couple of times, but in New Mexico it is entirely concurrent with Interstate 25 before it gets to Interstate 25 southern terminus before it joins up with Interstate 10 for most of the rest of its route. But before we actually start talking about US 85 going southbound in earnest, of course, please remember to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment for me down below if you have any feedback for me or if you want to discuss this route. And of course, if you really enjoyed it, please be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications. So with that all said, let us now start talking about US Route 85 going southbound. We start here at the border between the United States and Canada, and we can see our US border station just up ahead. I think it's really funny that on the sign they list the town of Fortuna, North Dakota, because I guess they gotta name it after something, and since that's the closest town to us, the border station is named after such a really tiny town. But anyways, after we go through our customs, we get our first reassurance shield for southbound US 85, as we also get a North Dakota welcome sign in the background. Our first junction of any significance is with North Dakota 5, and in fact, we are going to have a brief concurrency with North Dakota 5, as we get signed for Crosby and Williston. Crosby is where North Dakota 5 is going to go after it splits off from us, and Williston is our first control city here. We cross over the Continental Divide here in North Dakota. It is only at an elevation of 2,265 feet because, well, the Rocky Mountains don't really go through North Dakota, and as such, it's not exactly very high up here. And when we split off from North Dakota Route 5, it is getting signed for Crosby and Bowbells, while we continue to get signed for Williston. And just north of Williston, we meet up with US Route 2, and we are going to have a brief concurrency with it, as westbound it gets signed for Stanley and Minot, while we continue to get signed for Williston along with US 2. Although when we split off from US 2, we only get control cities for this US 85 business route here. They don't mention that if you want to get to Williston, you would want to continue straight on US 2, and we don't get any control cities either, so this is pretty weird how this sign is done. Now we meet US 2 once again, and at the left turn it is getting signed for Williston because going that way will also take you to Williston, although once again, if you were going to Williston you would have wanted to stay straight at that last junction. But now straight ahead we are getting signed for Alexander and Watford City, and I really like that Watford City is on the sign because I think that is what we should be signed for from here. And on our first mileage sign, Watford City is on the bottom line at 41 miles away. We meet and are going to become concurrent with North Dakota Route 200 for a ways, and we are getting signed for Watford City because both of these routes will be concurrent through there. And independent North Dakota 200 is getting signed for Fairview. Once we get to Alexander, we have a business route 85, and straight ahead we get signed once again for Watford City. Well, this is where you would want to turn off for Alexander. And after that junction, we get another mileage sign where Watford City is on the bottom line at 18 miles away. Here is our junction to get to Watford City, another business US 85. And straight ahead, we are now getting signed for Belfield, and I think that does make sense because that's the next significant place that we're going to go to on this route. Although, interestingly, after that intersection, we get this brown mileage sign listing different places where you can get off to go to Theodore Roosevelt National Park. The north unit is 12 miles away, and the south unit is 80 miles away. Here is the north entrance to Theodore Roosevelt National Park, and we can see that we actually have some pretty beautiful scenery for North Dakota right here. So that's pretty cool. And then after we pass by that entrance to the national park, we get this interesting mileage sign where we get Grassy Butte and Belfield listed, but there is an arrow before both of these towns, as once again we get another look at these really cool mountains in the background. Here is where North Dakota 200 splits off from us, is getting signed for Killdeer, and we continue to get signed for Belfield. Now we meet Interstate 94, which is getting signed for Bismarck and Billings. And I want to correct a mistake that I made in the Northbound US 85 video, where I mistakenly said that we become concurrent with Interstate 94 for shortways. That is actually not true. I only said that because the direction signs for these highways made it look like we would be concurrent with these highways, but no, that is not actually the case. We continue straight ahead through this intersection, and we do not join up with 94. There is no concurrency. But anyways, here is the next mile sign that we get after that junction, and we now get Bowman on the bottom line at 59 miles away. Here in Bowman, we are meeting and going to have a short concurrency with US Route 12, and it is getting signed for ROM, while our next control city is going to be Belfort, which, I mean, that's okay, I suppose, but not too much further from Belfort is Spearfish, which is like double the size of Belfort, and I think that would also make a lot of sense as our next control city. But, I mean, yeah, Belfort is also the biggest thing we'll have passed through in quite some time on US 85, so again, it does at least make sense. And Belfort is on the bottom line of our next mileage sign at 115 miles away. And now we come into South Dakota, and we get this really, really small welcome sign. And just after that welcome sign, we get our first mileage sign in South Dakota, where Belfort continues to be on the bottom line at 99 miles away. And interestingly, I was able to find this street view imagery where they replaced this sign just a few years ago, well, November 2021, and we can see that on the bottom line of this sign used to be lead. And I'm really glad that they changed this, because I think lead would be a horrible primary from here, because lead is only like 3,000 people, and I do not think that it would be a good idea to sign it from 128 miles away. So, good job, South Dakota. I'm really glad that even though you're not signing Spearfish, which I think would be the best choice from here, at least you got rid of a terrible, terrible mileage sign. So, good job on that. And here in Belforce, we are meeting US 212 once again as it gets signed for Newell and Wyoming state line, as we saw in the northbound US 85 video. And our next control city is going to be Spearfish, as it absolutely should be. And now, on the north side of Spearfish, we are meeting and going to have a brief concurrency with Interstate 90. This time we are going to be going eastbound on Interstate 90, and we get signed for Spearfish and Rapid City. I think that absolutely makes sense for us to be signed for. And westbound 90 is signed for Gillette, Wyoming, which I really do not like. I think it should be Billings here. And I should mention that I was okay with westbound getting signed for Spearfish the last time we had seen a junction for 90, because at that point we had been signed for Spearfish, and because we were going to be concurrent with 90, we should be getting signed for Spearfish there. But now, since this would be where you'd be getting off to get to Spearfish on westbound 90, yeah, absolutely right here we should be getting signed for Gillette. Now, you may have noticed the shirt that I've been wearing in this video, and that's because while I was in South Dakota on my big road trip from July 2025, I actually went to Pierre and I got this South Dakota shirt, and I figured it would be a great choice to wear today because I actually went on this concurrency right here, and I got some pictures that I would like to share with you. So here is the western end of the US 85 to Interstate 90 concurrency, where I got my own picture of US 85 northbound getting signed for Belforce. Here are our reassurance shields of eastbound Interstate 90, southbound US 85, along with eastbound US 14, as we get some really nice scenery here as we are about to go past the downtown of Spearfish. Here is another picture of said beautiful scenery. And here's a look at downtown Spearfish from Interstate 90 that I took. We meet US 14A for the first time that we will on US 85, and it is just getting signed as the Spearfish Canyon Scenic Byway. And we get a mileage sign with Rapid City on the bottom line at 44 miles away, as our split from Interstate 90 gets the top line at 3 miles away. And now here is where we will split off of Interstate 90, getting signed for Deadwood and Lead. And I definitely think that makes sense, because those are the next two places of significance that we will go to on US 85 from here. And the next one that you could probably sign, which would be Newcastle, Wyoming, is, I feel like, just a bit too far away to be signed. And this is also my last picture that I took on this concurrency, because I continued straight ahead on Interstate 90 eastbound, bound for Rapid City. Once we leave Interstate 90, here is a look at independent US 85 for the first time, and we get some really beautiful snow street view coverage, so that's really cool to see. Anyways, now we meet US 14A for the second time, and we are going to have a brief concurrency with it going in this direction. And now we're still getting signed for Deadwood on this direction sign. In my northbound 85 video, I said that we had a brief concurrency with US 385, when that is actually not true. The sign that we saw on northbound 85 was actually directing you to this intersection where 385 actually begins. This is the northern terminus of it. But in any case, we can see up ahead a sign for Lead, South Dakota. When we split off of US Route 14A, our next control city is going to be Newcastle, Wyoming, which is 45 miles away from here. And I definitely think that does make sense to be our primary from here, because Newcastle is really the only thing of any significance that we're going to go through in Wyoming for quite a while. Now here we come into Wyoming, and we got a pretty new Welcome to Wyoming sign. The one that I had shown you in the 85 northbound video had been there until I think like late 2024 or early 2025 or something like that. And this was also the Welcome to Wyoming sign that I had seen when I had traveled on Interstate 80 and 90 back in July of 2025. And just a little bit down the road from that Welcome to Wyoming sign, we got a mileage sign where Newcastle is on the bottom line at 28 miles away. Again, that definitely makes sense. Here we come to the junction of Wyoming 585, where it is getting signed for Sundance, and we continue to be signed for Newcastle. This is in Four Corners, which is the reason we had seen it on the bottom line on a mileage sign in the northbound 85 video. And after that junction, our bottom line becomes Mule Creek Junction, and this is where we will meet and have a brief concurrency with US Route 18. And I really feel like Newcastle could just be a one-liner here, because again, there really is nothing to Mule Creek Junction. Again, that's just where we meet US 18. There is not like an actual town or anything there, so yeah, I don't think it makes sense to be on the bottom line. And any actual towns that you could sign on the bottom line here, I feel like they're just too small. Anyways, east of Newcastle, we meet US Route 16, and as I mentioned in the northbound 85 video, that is how you want to get to Newcastle. You're going to turn off here, as that route actually goes through the town, whereas we just kind of bypass it. At this junction, our next control city is going to be Lusk, and I definitely think that does make a lot of sense, because Lusk isn't particularly a very big town, but it's also still quite far away from here. And anything else that you could sign here, again, I just feel like is too small to be signed from so far away. So yeah, Wyoming is really giving us the best they can do right here. As we can see on the bottom line of our next mileage sign, Lusk is still 78 miles away from here. So yeah, once again, definitely the right choice, I would say. And now here is where we meet US Route 18 and are going to be concurrent with it for a little bit. Eastbound, as before, is getting signed for Edgewater, South Dakota. Our next mileage sign has Lusk on the top line at 46 miles away, and we get Torrington on the bottom line at 103 miles away. And this is really about as far away from Torrington that I would ever willing to sign it from. So yeah, I think this mileage sign definitely makes sense. Here in Lusk, we are going to have a very, very brief concurrency with US 20 along with 18 and 85. Eastbound is getting signed for Chad Run. And we get signed for Douglas and Torrington, although they do it kind of in a IDOT way where they have Douglas and Torrington separated by a hyphen, which you might be led to believe indicates that Douglas and Torrington are kind of in the same area, when in fact Torrington is not even anywhere remotely close to Douglas. So yeah, I would actually kind of prefer if they did what they do on some signs on Interstate 80, where they have one control thingy like a Kentucky treatment or something, such as in Cheyenne, and then they put the word "and" on the sign where they have another thing, for example, like Greeley. Yeah, that's what I would kind of like to see here, as I have demonstrated with this edit that I have made. Anyways, here is where US 18 and 20 split off from us, as they get signed for Douglas once again. and we continue to get signed for Torrington. And by the way, I forgot to mention this when 18 had actually joined up with us, but I feel like that's just where US 18 should end. Not a particularly glamorous ending or anything, but you know what? Like, at that point, going west, US 18 is never independent on its own. It just gets signed with US 85 and 20 for the rest of its length, its entire run from there. So yeah, just having US 18 signed south of that junction where we met it for the first time, yeah, it's just completely pointless. And that's just where it should completely end altogether, in my opinion. But anyways, after we leave that junction or concurrency with 18 and 20, we get another mile sign where Lingle is on the top line and Torrington continues to be our bottom line at 56 miles away. And I'll be honest here, at this point, I think you could honestly have Torrington be the top line and start signing Cheyenne, because while it's Wyoming's biggest city, it's the capital, and I think it would definitely have merit to sign from quite a long ways away. But again, Torrington is the biggest thing that we will go through before we get there, so I guess it makes sense to be our primary here. But again, I would really like to see Cheyenne. When we get to Lingle, we meet and are going to have a brief concurrency with US Route 26 as we get signed straight ahead for Torrington once again. And US 26 westbound is getting signed for Fort Laramie. On our next mile sign, we see Torrington on the top line at 10 miles away, and Cheyenne does come onto our bottom line at 94 miles away, so that makes me really happy to see it. After we go through Torrington, we split off from US 26 as it gets signed eastbound for Scotts Bluff, and that is definitely a really cool primary for 26 to be getting. And we are getting signed south for Cheyenne. So this intersection is perfectly signed, and I really like to see this. After we go through Torrington and we have left US 26, we also become concurrent with Wyoming Route 92, and this is the beginning of a super state highway system, all numbered 92. I think there are 2 other states that Wyoming 92 will eventually run into, and they all signed this one stretch of pavement as State Route 92, so that's really cool. The Dirtpog wanted me to point that out. Also, at this Reassurance Shield combo, we get some really, really beautiful street view imagery. I like the full foliage we've got going on here, and we got some really nice lighting. However, though, when Wyoming 92 splits off from us, it is getting signed for Huntley, and I really do not like that control city, because do you want to know how many people there are in Huntley? 30. Only 30! Like, come on, Wyoming. I know this is a state route of yours, but there's another place you can sign that wouldn't be so provincial. In Lyman, Nebraska, they signed Torrington, so why can't you reciprocate? Now, this road also goes to Scotts Bluff, and I can understand not wanting to sign that because you already have it on US 26, and that's how you'd be getting there. But still, this is ridiculous. Ugh. I do not think it should be Huntley at all. But let's move on. On the next mile sign, we get Hawk Springs on the top line at 20 miles away, and Cheyenne is still our bottom line at 83 miles away, so that is good to see at least. And 5 miles north of Cheyenne, we are going to become concurrent with Interstate 25 and US 87 for the first time. And we are getting signed for Cheyenne because, of course, we are still north of the downtown. And northbound 25 and 87 are getting signed north for Casper, as they should be. And just 5 miles down the road, we're splitting off from 25 and 87 as we get signed along with Business 25 for Central Avenue. And at the end of that ramp, Wyoming has made a shield error, and accidentally given Business Interstate 25 the red, white, and blue shield when it should be a green shield. Also, at this turn, we can see that we can get to the Wyoming Department of Transportation headquarters. It is not too far away from this intersection, so here's a look at the building. And I'll tell you what, if I ever come back to this city, I definitely want to give this place a visit for reasons, which I probably should not get into because they would not be pleasant to talk about. Anyways, here's one of my own pictures in Cheyenne, where we have a map of the Capitol building campus and surrounding area. Pretty cool stuff. And here is another one of my own pictures on 85 and Business 25 as we get these reassurance shields. Here is the northern terminus of Interstate 180, where we get signs straight ahead for that, along with Business 25 and 85, as we also meet US 30 and Business Interstate 80 here. The signs that we can see in this picture look a hell of a lot better than the ones that we saw going the other way. Here are our reassurance shields for Business 25, Interstate 180, South 85, and Business US 87. And here is where 180 ends at its parent, as westbound 80 is getting signed for Rock Springs, and eastbound it gets signed for Sydney, which are once again absolutely horrible control cities for it. And sadly, I do not have any pictures on the other side of this bridge because at this point I was turning west to get onto 80 to go to Rock Springs, although I went to Salt Lake City, which is what it should be signed for here, and I went to the Utah Capitol building. But anyways, we are going to move on now to this intersection where 85 South is getting signed for Greeley, as we see another sign for 80 East getting signed for Sydney. Also, Greeley is the correct choice because if you wanted to get to Denver from here, you would have just stayed on Interstate 25. Although, when Business Interstate 25 and US 87 split off from us, they are getting signed for Denver and not for Collins. It's a miracle. That's a rare W. Wyoming, why can't you do this sort of thing on Interstate 80? Like, why can't you sign Denver there? Now, I get it, in Denver going north on 25, Fort Collins has a bit more of a leg to stand on there because it's only about half the size of Cheyenne and it's just barely far enough away that it would be understandable to sign it there. But yeah, absolutely 25 South should be getting signed for Denver, and you sign Fort Collins on Interstate 8. At least we get it here. So this trophy is definitely earned, and I wish Wyoming could do more of this sort of thing. And interestingly, once we finally leave the Cheyenne area, our first mile sign that we see does have Denver on the bottom line. So in this case, I could understand not signing 85 for Denver, although I'm not going to object to it because, I mean, they could have Denver on so many other signs in this part of the country that they don't, and it's still pretty cool that we get it here, even though I could absolutely understand not having it on the sign in favor of Greeley, but yeah, I don't know. Let's just move on into Colorado, where we get this Welcome to Colorful Colorado sign right here. And on our first mileage sign in Colorado, Denver is still at the bottom line at 95 miles away, where Greeley is on the top line at 41 miles away. And you know what? I think I have to give Colorado a rare W here because, I mean, yeah, again, it'd be faster to take 25 at this point to get to Denver, but like, they've got Greeley here. We're still going to be going to Denver. I think this mileage sign does make sense. It's really cool to see that they're signing Denver and Greeley. Like, I mean, on that sign between the Denver Metro and Greeley, we're looking at over 1 million people that this route serves. So even though, once again, 25 would be the faster route to Denver, it's still pretty cool to see this sign. Although on the next mileage sign that at least I could find on 85 southbound, Greeley is the bottom line at 32 miles away, which, I mean, again, that's still understandable. But when we get to Greeley and we have our interchange with Business 85 and US 34, we get pulled through along with westbound US 34 for Loveland and Denver, while eastbound US 34 is getting signed for Fort Morgan. Now, Fort Morgan is a pretty small town, but it does make sense to sign that, you know, for that route. And I should have mentioned in the northbound video that Loveland is a pretty big city that's not in the immediate Denver area. So I should have done this in the northbound video, but here I am going to hand out another rare Colorado W. That is 2 in this video so far, and we've barely been in the state. So yeah, Colorado, this is absolutely some of your best signage that you've got going on here. Why can you not do this kind of thing on the interstates? I don't understand this state, like, at all. It's so weird. It was like that on northbound too. Anyways, we are concurrent very, very briefly with US 34. Here is where these routes go their separate ways. Once again, 34 getting signed for Loveland as we continue to get signed for Denver. Although, on this mileage sign, Denver has gone away completely and we get Gilchrist and Fort Lupton. So, once again, like, I do not understand what CDOT is doing here. It's very stupid. I don't know why Denver has gone away. But then on the next mileage sign, we get Denver on the top line at 20 miles away, and we get Colorado Springs as our bottom line from 87 miles away. So that's really cool that we get 25's next logical primary. I mean, if you're not going to sign Albuquerque from Denver, Colorado Springs definitely makes sense. So yeah, definitely this is a really cool mileage sign. We meet E470 once again, and as before is getting signed for Aurora and Thornton makes a heck of a lot more sense to sign here, because going the other way on 85 to 470, you would have had to go out of your way to get to Thornton, whereas here, it's a pretty natural drive that you would make to get to Thornton. So yeah, the fact that you're not signing Lyman here when absolutely you could, oh my goodness gracious. I almost want to hand out another trophy, but yeah, it's crazy. They're actually doing the right things. Anyways, we are about to join in with westbound Interstate 76, although they don't really give us any advance warning that that's going to happen. We pretty much just got a California, Nevada style sort of freeway entrance sign here. And when we split off from Interstate 76 along with US 6, we are getting signed for Commerce City. And I think that does make sense, because if you wanted to get to Denver, you would just stay on 76 here. We meet Interstate 270 once again going in this direction, and this time we do get access to it going eastbound. Westbound is getting signed for Boulder, and eastbound is getting signed for Aurora. Well, I'm sure that a certain hedgehog would be really happy to see that it's actually getting signed for Lyman. Oh. Okay then. Just past that interchange, we had been concurrent with Colorado Route 2 for a little bit. This is where it splits off, and it is getting signed to eastbound Interstate 70, and it just gets signed as Colorado Boulevard. Well, I mean, I guess that Kentucky treatment would probably be better than it getting signed for Lyman. And we also get a Kentucky treatment of Vasquez Boulevard, as we get signed to westbound Interstate 70. We are also still concurrent with US 6 at this point. And we will stay concurrent with US 6 as we turn right here to get onto Interstate 70. And it is just getting signed as 46 North Avenue. I don't know. I mean, I guess I can kind of understand not signing it for Grand Junction right here because we're still right in the heart of downtown Denver, but I mean, I don't know why that's on there. Anyways, though, now we will leave Interstate 70 as we join onto Interstate 25 southbound, getting signed for Colorado Springs. And I do think that makes sense because, yeah, Albuquerque is bigger, but not by all that much. I mean, maybe you could co-sign them on this sign. But, I mean, Colorado Springs, again, it's still a pretty big city, so you could still sign it just by itself. I feel like it would make sense. Northbound 25, though, getting signed for Thornton and Fort Collins. Not really so great. And 70 west here, because we have an option to still get back onto 70 if you get off here by mistake. It is just getting a Kentucky treatment. Now, maybe I feel like you could sign Grand Junction. I don't know. We're just going to move on now to exit 207B, where we split off from Interstate 25 and just become independent US 85 once again, as we get signed for Santa Fe Drive. And I think that does make sense because we're still basically within the Denver metro area here. And we meet US 285 once again. I believe in the northbound video, it didn't actually get any proper control cities. It just got signed as Hampton Avenue, and that is once again the case here. Now, this traffic light actually is not on US 85 itself, but as I was gathering the pictures, I happened to notice that there is actually a road in the Denver metro that is called Jackass Hill Road. So I thought that was really funny, and I just wanted to show this. I can't believe that is actually like a real named. Here we meet C470 once again, and as before, it just gets no control cities, so that's pretty lame. I feel like, at least definitely for westbound, you could have one, even eastbound, like even if you gave it like a Kentucky treatment or something, that would still be better than nothing. Either way, here we meet that one particular Colorado state route again. It is getting signed for Deckers, and straight ahead we are getting signed for Castle Rock, which is, I believe, where we are going to meet and become concurrent with Interstate 25 once again. And it is on the top line of our next mile sign at 8 miles away. Our bottom line is Colorado Springs at 48 miles away, and that is definitely the correct choice there, because once again we're going to be getting onto Interstate 25 once again, and that is where we will be going from there. Here is where we meet Interstate 25 once again, and our ramp to get onto it has no control cities for some reason, although northbound is getting signed for Denver, which is correct. And we can also see a southbound US 85 shield right here at this junction. On the other side of the interchange, it is also worthy to mention we are meeting Colorado Route 86, although we don't get any mention of it on southbound 85. This is where Colorado 86 ends, and we get a begin northbound 85 shield, which is weird because obviously this is not where 85 begins. It's just where independent 85 begins until it gets to Denver. But yeah, it's pretty cool that we do get this signage, at least, I suppose. Also, we get a great view here. Look at those mountains. So beautiful. Also, we get the reciprocation of those signs when we have already merged onto Interstate 25. This is if you continue straight from that interchange. Here at exit 148 on Interstate 25, we are now leaving it once again, and I really do not like how this signage is handled here. We get no indication at all whatsoever that US 85 is leaving Interstate 25 here, and Interstate 25 gets no southbound control city on its pull-through, so that's really lame. I mean, you could put Pueblo on there, you could put Pueblo and Albuquerque, I don't know. It's just really, really lame. Also, going through Colorado Springs, I could not find any US 85 reassurance shields until we get here to our next junction with Interstate 25, along with US 24, where it is getting signed south for Pueblo. I mean, again, I suppose Pueblo is fine, but I really would kind of like to see Albuquerque also on the sign, if not just Albuquerque by itself, because we're a lot closer to Albuquerque now, and you know, Albuquerque is such a massive city. And once again, like I said, I could not find any southbound reassurance shields on US 85. I believe this mileage sign is still there, where Canyon City is now on the bottom line. I think this is also Colorado Route 115, and Canyon City is on there because that route will go there. But again, I'd really like to see some sort of mention of US 85. I believe we split from Colorado 115 right here at exit 46, and we just got signed as Lake Avenue. I really don't like how the signage in Colorado Springs is handled. Although, on a positive note, we do get some beautiful scenery right here, so that's something at least. So we turn on to Venatucci Boulevard, and it was on this street where I could finally find our next reassured shield for US 85 southbound. And Google Maps lists US 85 in this area as Colorado 85 for some reason, and it also mentions that US 87 is concurrent with us, even though it is not actually concurrent with us. It stays on Interstate 25 the entire time, where US 85 is also listed, even though it is not on Interstate 25. We are on one of the roads over to the side, as you can see in this image. And I know that US 85 is there because this road is also listed as the Can-Am Highway, which is what US 85 follows throughout its entire length. So yeah, I really have no idea why Google Maps lists these roads as what they are at this point. But anyways, now we come back to Interstate 25, and at its northbound interchange ramp here, we can see it's getting signed for Colorado Springs because we're now south of the downtown at this point, although it really should just be Denver. There is no sign on 85 southbound itself listing what our next control city is going to be when we merge onto Interstate 25. Although if we look at the other side of the interchange going the other way, we can see that now we're getting signed for Pueblo. And I already talked about my thoughts on that, so we will just move on now to Pueblo, where we meet and we're going to have a brief concurrency with US 50, as westbound 50 is getting signed for Canyon City, and we, along with 50, get no control city on this overhead here, which is pretty lame. So we are going to have to look on US 50 to find our next control city. And of course, it is what else but Trinidad, because you know, Colorado is provincial and doesn't want to sign anything outside of its borders. It should be Albuquerque, or at the very least, Santa Fe would be preferable. Now, in Todd's southbound Interstate 25 video, he showed a mileage sign where Albuquerque is on the bottom line at 322 miles away, but I wanted to see just how far they keep going with Albuquerque on the bottom line before they switch to Trinidad. And unsatisfyingly, my search ended here at this mileage sign, where it is listed at 302 miles away. Every other one I could find south of here just had Trinidad on the bottom line, so that is pretty lame. And I just decided to skip ahead to the last mileage sign that we see here in Colorado, and it is a pretty bad one, where Las Vegas, New Mexico is on the bottom line at 123 miles away. That should honestly just be the top line, I feel like. Or you could have a three-liner here with Raton, Las Vegas, and Albuquerque. You know, like we saw in the very previous slide. Now we come into New Mexico and we get this really, really lame, tiny Welcome to New Mexico sign that isn't even anywhere close to the pavement of Interstate 25. It would be very, very hard to see this as you're coming from Colorado, so already we're not off to a great start here in New Mexico. And I should also mention that I didn't see this when I was getting the pictures for the northbound US 85 video, but there is in fact a Welcome to Colorado sign going that direction, but for some reason it's like a mile south of the border, so I would not have expected to look there, but hey, here it is now. I'm showing you this here, so just at least be grateful for that. Just a little bit south of the Colorado-New Mexico border, we get this beautiful snow street view imagery. I wonder how many people think of snow when they think of New Mexico. Probably not a whole lot. On the south side of Raton, we are meeting and going to have our brief concurrency with US 64 as US 87 finally leaves us, and both of these roads are getting signed for Raton and Clayton. And it's quite interesting that US 87 gets signed as going eastbound here because obviously it is going south, and eventually if you follow US 87 that way, it will take you to Texas. And on our next mileage sign, we get Albuquerque on the bottom line at 118 miles away after it had been absent for a lot of these signs going southbound. After we go through the New Mexico 16 interchange, where we had that really, really stupid mileage sign where Santa Fe was getting signed on the bottom line from only 17 miles away, we get a slightly better one here with Albuquerque on the bottom line at 40 miles away, even though I would much prefer to see El Paso or even Las Cruces here, because those are the next couple of important places. But, I mean, again, Albuquerque is still a pretty big city. Of course, it still makes sense to sign it here. Maybe I'm just being a little greedy, I don't know. In any case, we meet US 550 once again, and this time it does not get an overhead sign, which is kind of lame, but then again, I guess more traffic would be getting on it from the other side, so, I don't know. Either way, here in Albuquerque, we meet Interstate 40 once again, and it gets the same controls that it did before, and we are now getting pulled through for Las Cruces. And again, I really kind of would like to see El Paso sign here. I mean, they have so much room on this sign, they could just move the airport symbol thingy, and they could also put El Paso on it, but I mean, I guess New Mexico loves to play the provincialism game. And Las Cruces does come onto the bottom line of the next mileage sign that we see at 216 miles away. Further down the road, we are meeting and going to have our decently sized US 60 concurrency. Here is getting signed for Bernardo and Mountain Air. And the Dirtbog recently did a US 60 series. You can at least go check out his eastbound video up in the corner, which I will leave you to watch right there. Something really weird about our US 60 concurrency is that for some reason, even though we get our regular Interstate 25 shield, which they put in a green sign for some reason, we also do get a westbound US 60 reassurance shield, which is weird because, like, we're also on US 85 as well. So why can't they put that there as well? It was the same deal with the US 64 concurrency. I don't understand why they pick and choose which routes to sign concurrently. They also did the same thing where they didn't sign US 87. That was really weird. But anyways, here is where US 60 westbound splits off from us as it gets signed for Socorro, because this is where you get off to go to downtown. And it is also getting signed for Magdalena because that is its next control city west of here. Although I would kind of prefer to see Springerville, Arizona, because that is a much more significant town, even though it's a pretty sizable distance from here. And I mean, it's not that big, but it would still be a better control city, I feel like. Now, the Dirtpog and I were simultaneously collecting our pictures for US 60 westbound and US 85 southbound. So I was curious to see what Interstate 25 and US 85, which doesn't get listed on this sign for some reason. But yeah, I was curious to see what the control city would be. And it is El Paso! El Paso! They signed El Paso instead of Las Cruces. That is awesome! I'm really happy to see that. That is a rare New Mexico W. I mean, yeah, I would have liked to see it in Albuquerque, but you know what? They could have signed Las Cruces again, and I'm just really happy to see it. So, yeah, that's really awesome. And in fact, it comes onto the bottom line of our next month sign at 189 miles away. So, that's really cool to see. I'm glad that they do that. However, though, when we meet US 380 in the middle of nowhere, we come crashing back down to reality and get signed for Las Cruces once again, as northbound Interstate 25 gets signed for Socorro as opposed to Albuquerque. So, this is really stupid. And on the bottom line of the next mileage sign, it is once again Las Cruces at 136 miles away. If you have a 3-line mileage sign with El Paso before, why can't it be on this sign as well when we are now closer to both of these places? And speaking of truth or consequences, when we come here to the exit where you would get off for truth or consequences, we get no control city on this pull-through sign for southbound Interstate 25. What? Just because we're close to Las Cruces now, you don't want to sign it? Or, you know, El Paso or something? New Mexico, what are you doing? Our next mileage sign also still has Las Cruces on the bottom line. But, hey, look at the numbers that we get for the first 2 cities on this mileage sign. That is pretty cool, at least. I'll give them that. And now we come to our US 70 interchange once again. As before, it is getting signed for Las Cruces and Alamogordo, because that is how you would get to downtown Las Cruces from here. And I would like to give a shout out to the Dirtpog for a couple more videos that he made. He made a US 70 series, as well as a US 6 series, which I forgot to mention when we were in Denver. So those videos, once again, I will leave in the corner for you to go watch. Please go check them out. And now we get a pull through here on southbound Interstate 25 for El Paso, once we are only 6 miles north of Interstate 10. And speaking of Interstate 10, here is the southern terminus of Interstate 25, where 10 West gets the horrible, horrible control city of Deming, where it should be Tucson or Phoenix or whatever. But at least we get a nice pull-through sign for El Paso as we merge onto Interstate 10 East. But sadly, we don't get any end Interstate 25 shield. The next shield we see is just Interstate 10 eastbound. So that's pretty lame. But I mean, honestly, we're in New Mexico, so what would you expect? The next mileage sign that we see has El Paso on the bottom line at 37 miles away, because why would you expect them to sign anything further? Because they probably wouldn't want to acknowledge the existence of San Antonio or anything else in Texas, because they're just signing this out of obligation because they have no more New Mexico towns to sign. You are now leaving New Mexico, land of enchantment. Yeah, more like land of provincial control cities. Welcome to Texas, drive friendly, the Texas way. Yeah, right. I will say though, we get a really, really cool mileage sign just after we come into Texas the last one that we will see in this video, where El Paso is on the top line at 18 miles away, and we get Beaumont signed from 852 miles away. So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense to sign Beaumont as a control city from here, but this is just a one-off thing, so for what it is, I think that's pretty interesting. Now here we come to exit 13 on Interstate 10, where we will leave Interstate 10 and become Independent 85 for the last few miles of our route, as we also split off with Texas 375, and we just get the Kentucky treatments of Pizona Drive and Sunland Park Drive, which, I mean, that does make sense because obviously we're going to be going into downtown El Paso. Here we split with Texas 375. This is actually the last free exit on Texas 375 before you have to pay a toll. And on Independent US 85, as we get a reassurance shield right here, we go over this really cool railroad bridge, so I like seeing that. And now we come to the junction of El Paso Street and Pizona Drive, where US 85 ends, and we meet the western terminus of US 62. And sadly, we do not get a end US 85 shield on either end, so that is pretty lame. And you'll notice, in fact, that we have not made it to the Mexican border, even though we started at the Canadian border. So let us now continue down Pizona Drive for a little bit, where we see an eastbound US 62 reassurance shield right there. And also, interestingly, Google Maps continues to list this as US 85. I don't know why. But we're going to turn down Stanton Road right here, Stanton Street. I don't know exactly what, I don't really care that much. This is just for fun, because, once again, US 85 actually doesn't touch the Mexican border. Whatever the case may be, if you turn down that street, eventually you'll end up here at the Mexican Customs and Immigration checkpoint. So now we can say that we have indeed gone from the Canadian border to the Mexican border. So with that said, let us now move on to quarter launch 437s the way it should be for US 85 southbound. Now, this list is going to be pretty similar to the northbound list, but with just a few minor tweaks. To start, I would say it should be Williston and then Watford City, for basically the same reasons that I've already outlined in my northbound way it should be. Then it should be Belfield, then Bowman, although going southbound, I would skip Belforce and just go straight to Spearfish, because Spearfish, again, is double the size of Belforce, and it's only just a little bit further down the road from Belforce. And then after that, I would then sign Lead and Newcastle, then Lusk. But from Lusk, I would co-sign Torrington and Cheyenne, because once you get to about Lingle or so, then US 85 actually becomes about just as fast to get to Cheyenne from points north to Cheyenne. So yeah, not really any reason that you would want to cut over to Interstate 25. But then once we leave Torrington, then absolutely it should be Cheyenne. And then from Cheyenne, I'd say Greeley is fine to sign on US 85, because it goes there, and you know, it's a pretty big city that's independent from the 25 corridor. But then from Greeley, we should be signing Denver. And from here on out, I would say that Albuquerque can be just on its own, but the cities that we then go through do have merit to just also be on the sign. You can maybe sign them on their own, but as we go down each city here, Albuquerque being cosigned becomes less and less optional, I would say. So then first we have Colorado Springs, which could definitely be on its own, although I'd prefer if Albuquerque were cosigned. And then we have Pueblo, which, yeah, I mean, you could sign on its own, but it would be much better if you co-signed Albuquerque with it, because Pueblo's not as big. And then Santa Fe, almost definitely, I would want to see co-signed with Albuquerque. Because, yeah, Santa Fe is New Mexico's capital, but it is not really that big to warrant standing on its own. And it's so close to Albuquerque anyways. You might as well just sign Albuquerque, which is what I would sign out of Santa Fe. And then in Albuquerque, I would like to see El Paso signed, but I'd say it's definitely fine to co-sign Las Cruces and El Paso. And then after Las Cruces, yeah, it should just be El Paso on its own the whole rest of the way. Now, with all that said, here are my plans for the next few Control City videos. It is going to start with my own look at Interstate 476, and then after that, it is going to be a video about Ohio State Route 93, because, well, I'll get into that more when I actually talk about the route, and maybe I'll provide more reasoning in the Interstate 476 video. After that, I'm not really so sure, but those are at least the next two videos coming up. Maybe in the Interstate 476 video, I'll have some more information for you. I think I probably said a similar thing like that in the US 46 video, but I promise next time there will be 3 upcoming videos mentioned. But with all that said, that will now conclude this US 85 Southbound video. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like. Comment down below if you have any feedback for me or if you want to discuss this route. And if you really enjoyed it, please be sure to ring the notification bell. But with all that said, this now concludes my whole entire US 85 coverage, and I will see you all in whatever video I upload next. Peace.